My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the AstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today we'll be talking about the scrappy little Star Citizen salvage ship that is the most important creation from Drake in decades, the Vulture. Before we get started, I want to thank y'all for your continued support. We have over 17,000 subscribers and rising. So if this is the second time you've watched one of my videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified when these are released. If you still haven't gotten Star Citizen, think about using my referral code on screen now for 5,000 extra UEC when you get the game. With that being said, let's learn about the experimental ship that helped drive salvage fever. We first need to look at the profession of salvage in the verse to really understand what the Vulture means. Salvage has rarely been a large profession in the UEE. Most salvage ships before the 30th century seem to have been converted haulers, and the job of salvager split between cleanup crew and archaeological treasure hunter. We know that at least one dedicated salvage ship existed, likely before the 2900s, the Reclaimer. However, the only references I could find for it puts it sometime before 2932. Thus, I will conjecture that the Reclaimer is a newer ship, likely built in the post-Meser era to capitalize on Aegis's turn towards the civilian market. Thus, in general, salvage as a career is still relatively new, only gaining popularity in the last 2 generations. This is likely because salvage isn't a very fulfilling or rewarding profession for the people of the UEE. If you're lucky, you find some lost records of historical importance. If you're unlucky, you search for said historical find and come up empty, or you find the easy work of being effectively a space garbage picker, eking out a living recycling debris. It was also likely a much more dangerous profession during the Meser era, because you could easily come across a wreck which you weren't supposed to find, or say a rare Xi'an ship, which at best would be confiscated for you, and at worst, result in you getting black-bagged and sent off to Charon III's political prison complex for knowing too much. With that said, when I say that the Vulture is almost entirely the reason salvage has become not only a viable profession, but a popular one, you can understand just how important this ship is in the verse. For how important it is, though, it didn't start off as a salvage ship, but instead an experimental cutlass, known as the Vertical Landing Test 3. The VLT-3 was likely designed to improve the landing and takeoff capability of early AS-1 cutlasses, loaded up with testing equipment and sensors to test things like thrust, temperature, and other stressors on engines and the superstructure. All that changed in 2895, when an incident sent a freighter, likely a Hull C or D, off course and disappeared. Now, if you want to learn more about the legendary line of the Hull series ships, for context of just how large this loss was, watch the previous video we covered on the hulls. This ship was the Empire Slipper, which carried with it a consignment of rare art and precious minerals when it vanished. This caused a stir of interest from the public and led to speculation that the ship had been hijacked by persons or creatures unknown. That was until it was found by UEE patrol inside a dense asteroid cluster within the danger zone of a red giant's corona. While it is supposition, given the nature of the ship's cargo and the ship itself, it is likely that this incident took place in the Odin system. So while people knew where the ship was, due to the debris and asteroids, no ship with proper shielding could make it through. And because of the radiation from the star, no one in an EVA suit could survive long enough to try and salvage the ship. This led to the creators of the ship, MISC, to issue a bounty of 10 million credits to anyone able to recover the black box from the Empire Slipper to help explain the mystery. Unexpectedly, Drake Interplanetary came to the rescue of their rivals. You see, since its founding in the mid-29th century, Drake and MISC had been fierce competitors in the industrial transport and in popularity amongst the common people for their personal spacecraft. So Drake was taking this challenge up not just to claim the reward of the credits and the salvage rights, but to force MISC to effectively admit that Drake's ships were superior. So to accomplish this task, Drake gathered an elite team on their homeworld of Berea in the Magnus system to figure out how to tackle this challenge. They ended up taking the VLT-3 and heavily modifying it, removing the testing equipment, replacing the interior cargo bay with a heavy shield generators, and bolting to the prow 2 delicate but versatile remote manipulator arms. The result was an overshielded, underpowered amalgamation that was small enough to pick through the debris and rocks while keeping the crew of two safe. Using a temporary station as a staging post, the VLT-3 made over 36 expeditions, using the manipulator arms to enter and extract the cargo and the black box, all while the UEE watched. When presented with the black box by Drake, MISC didn't give their rival the promised $10 million. Instead, they sued them. MISC claimed that Drake had made a copy of the black box illegally before returning it to them. Despite this legal drama, Drake's reputation had been buoyed from the stunt, giving them a much-needed boost as they had garnered a reputation as a brand for outlaws and pirates. But after the VLT-3, that began to change to a rough but positive force in the personal spacecraft market, just as that market began to heat up in the late 29th century. To boost this further, Drake sent the ship on a 9-system PR tour to be displayed at aerospace shows and museum exhibits, with the ship still sporting its seared-off paint and micrometeorite impact marks. Sadly, excitement over the VLT-3 faded after 4 unmarked cutlasses destroyed a MISC Hull D in a brutal planned attack, and Drake's piratical reputation re-emerged. So the ship was placed back into storage until a fortuitous discovery brought the famous prototype back into the spotlight. In 2932, a reclaimer known as the General Dogsbody discovered a failed 22nd century colony ship adrift in deep space. Needless to say, this historical find made the crew of the ship millionaires and minor celebrities overnight. It was this find that started the current boom of salvage as a profession, proving that not only was there viable money to be made, but fame to be earned. This resulted in a boost of sales of reclaimers the next year, which caught the attention of Drake executives, who realized they had their own salvage ship, and it was much cheaper and easier to use for the general public, the VLT-3. A team headed by veteran Drake designer Sod Perkins began work on developing the VLT-3 into a standalone salvage ship. Surprisingly, much of the internal layout of the experimental cutlass remained in this redesign, allowing for parts to be shared between the two ships to make it cheaper and easier to operate. The major change was the removal of the heavy shield to be replaced with a salvage processing room and a small living space. They also swapped out the articulating arms for what Drake calls rippers, which are standalone salvage booms supported by lariat tractor beam and a tomium scraper rig. The ship was designed to be the main tool someone would salvage with, and as a result didn't support EVA salvage. To reflect this, the crew size was reduced from 2 to 1, reinforcing the idea that all someone needed to make the find of a lifetime was this ship and their own luck. Finally, the ship had improved maneuvering thrusters and an oversized shield generator to allow it to pick through cluttered areas and be safe while doing it. This ship would be known as the Vulture and would debut in 2938. The marketing team leaned into the notoriety of the new ship's lineage by stylizing the name on marketing materials to emphasize the V, L, and T in Vulture and replacing the E with a 3. Shortly after, it seemed Drake struck their own fortune with the ship, as within 8 months, Drake was forced to open 2 remote facilities to meet demands. While there was backlash with their competitors accusing Drake of selling the dream and overpromising inexperienced captains incredible promises, these critics were silenced quickly. Several major finds were made and reclaimed by vultures shortly after it hit the market, including a Genesis Starliner thought to have been destroyed, and 2 Hull A's that had collided and spun away from their planned routes in an unexpected manner. These successes drove sales and hype for salvage even higher. In 2941, Drake released their first update to the ship, which added weapons, and in 2943, the UEE Navy purchased 300 Vultures for battlefield support operations, though meant for more non-combat cleanup operations and the increasingly intensive battles against the Vandul. Drake has continued to develop the government version of the ship to be able to accommodate more salvage, as since the declaration of war on the Vandul is set to have even more work for the UEE cleanup crews to accomplish. The latest version of the ship was released in 2949. This made the extended cab upgrade standard, which increased the internal cargo capacity from 8 to 12 SCU, while offering a low-cost upgrade for older models to increase their size as well. However, the biggest impact the Vulture has had on Drake came when Andon Arden became CEO. Seeking to finally quell the bad reputation of Drake, CEO Arden began to shift the company away from combat ships to professional ships. This included vehicles like the Privateer, the Corsair, the Mule, and the Cutter. In the marketing materials for these ships, they are not compared with the venerable Cutlass, but instead, the Vulture, with the Cutter even taking design cues like its engines from the Vulture over the Cutlass. As a result, it's safe to say that the Vulture is becoming the face of the new Drake Interplanetary, professional ships for the people. The Vulture almost single-handedly changed the salvage profession and Drake's fortunes. What started as an experimental cutlass being used to humiliate their rivals has turned into a driving force in public opinion of both the company and the profession as a whole. The future looks bright for the Vulture, as it remains the best-selling salvage vessel on the market, cementing it and Drake as the new powerhouse in professional ships. I'd like to thank you for watching. I'd also like to thank those Patreons on screen now, whom, without their help, none of this would be possible. If you want to join them, the link is in the description. For as little as $5 a month, you get early access to videos, including a timed exclusive covering the entire history of the Star Citizen universe, whose first few episodes have been released to the public. Check them out now to see what $5 a month will get you. For now, let me know what you think about the Vulture and Salvage in the comments below. And as always, remember, ex historia ad astra.